On tonight's broadcast, the hot zone, the most dangerous place on earth, just got worse, and there were sensitive meetings today at the White House. The flu track, more cases and in more places now around the world. What the experts are saying about the long haul. Ford's future, the only big three car maker not to take bailout money. They now say they have a better idea. And Safe at Home, making two problems equal one solution and making a difference for people in need. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. We routinely describe it as the most dangerous place on earth, the region occupied by Afghanistan and Pakistan. The White House brought both sides together in one room today. Both presidents, along with President Obama, they've named their common enemy, but getting at it, deciding on one strategy has proven tough for the three nations. We have our team on this story tonight, and we'll begin tonight here in our New York studios with our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. This is a high-stakes game, Rich.
It certainly is. President Obama has clearly made Afghanistan and Pakistan the focus of his foreign policy, and today, for the first time, he called in both of their heads of state to the White House to try and change direction. Today, President Obama brought in the leaders of what may be the world's most volatile nations, Pakistan and Afghanistan, to launch a new coordinated strategy to fight al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
We meet today as three sovereign nations joined by a common goal: to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat al-Qaeda and its extremist allies in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
But relations have been tense between Pakistan's President Asif Zardari and Afghanistan's Hamid Karzai. They blame each other for allowing militants to operate almost unchecked along the shared Afghan-Pakistan border. Today, promises to fight together.
The two countries together can wage a more effective struggle against the menace of terrorism.
We stand with our brother Karzai and the people of Afghanistan against this common threat, this menace, which I have called cancer.
But today the U.S. was apologizing to Afghanistan. The Red Cross said dozens of civilians were killed in what may have been a U.S. airstrike in western Afghanistan Monday.
I wish to express, my personal regret and certainly the sympathy of our administration on the loss of civilian life in Afghanistan.
Afghan villagers say up to 130 civilians were killed. But the U.S. military claims to have witness accounts that the Taliban killed the civilians with hand grenades and has launched an investigation. The timing couldn't be worse. The White House is pressuring Afghanistan to increase its fight against the Taliban. From Pakistan, the U.S. military wants more counterterrorism operations. Pakistan to move more troops to the Afghan border and to end side peace deals with the Taliban. Pakistan seems to have gotten the message. Today, Pakistani gunships and troops battle to take back the Swat and neighboring Bunair valleys from the Taliban.
I'm actually quite impressed by the actions that the Pakistani government is now taking. I think that action was called for and action has been forthcoming.
But the military offensive comes at a price. It could displace as many as 800,000 people. 100,000 refugees have already fled the valleys outside of Islamabad. Some of the militants are so dug in this area, they've even taken up positions in the emerald mines in this very tough terrain.
All right, Richard, thanks. Richard Engel starting us off here in our New York studios. And we want to get more on this from our chief White House correspondent, Chuck Todd, and our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Chuck, first to you. It has to be seen as some measure of how they view this crisis, that with all they have going on, the Obama White House has chosen to devote this kind of time to this. Of course, they want credit that this gathering's happening at all.
Well, that's right, and I think that we will look back on this and say this is quintessential Obama. This is the Obama doctrine at work. Bring two sides together, get them talking, and do this a lot. They want to do this 4 times a year. But the reason this has risen to the top of his to-do list, it's Pakistan and those nuclear weapons and the fact that it's a nuclear power. There were 2 questions hanging over this summit that U.S. officials were ducking all over the place, and that is, will we get to the point where we have to send troops to Pakistan, and are those nuclear weapons secure? Well, the whole point of this summit is to get Zardari, the president of Pakistan, focused on his fight so that we don't have to deal with those two questions, Brian.
And Andrea, Chuck mentioned the nuclear weapons, which has to be mentioned in any discussion of this region. Yes, this is a long ball by the administration, but no talks can be better than the principles. At the end of the day, how much faith does the United States have in either of these two leaders?
Not enough. They're trying to build trust between the two of them, and they've pointed out that, as in contrast to the last time the Afghan leader and a previous Pakistani leader met at the White House, another president, George W. Bush, they wouldn't even shake hands. This time there was a warm embrace, a promise to work together. But, Brian, they don't really know whether they can trust Zardari. They don't know whether they can trust Karzai. And the Secretary of State went over to have breakfast with the Pakistani leader. They were a little concerned that they beat up on him too much in recent testimony and made too many overtures, perhaps, to his opposition leader, very popular Islamicist opposition leader. So she went over there, sat down with him in the hotel at the Willard Hotel today, and tried to restore some degree of confidence with him. But the bottom line is, will they work together? And we don't know that yet.
A messy situation in such a dangerous part of the world. Andrea Mitchell, Chuck Todd, and Richard Engel before them, our thanks for starting us off tonight. In this program note this evening, both principals in today's White House summit will be David Gregory's guest this Sunday. The presidents of Pakistan and Afghanistan exclusively on Meet the Press. Now to the other story dominating the headlines this week, as it did last week. The good news on swine flu: it is milder than expected. The bad news, it's still spreading and quickly. There are now 642 confirmed cases here in this country. For contrast, that's up from 400 just yesterday. And it's now across almost all of the country, 41 states. Worldwide, more than 1,500 confirmed cases in 22 countries. We also learned more today about the first American to die of this swine flu. Our chief science correspondent, Robert Bazell, is here with us with an update tonight. Bob?
Good evening, Brian. Tonight, indeed, we have a face of the rare but worst outcome of the flu. And there's growing concern that this new virus is a disease mostly of young people. Judy Trinnell, a 33-year-old schoolteacher in Harlequin, Texas, was the first American to die of swine flu. She was pregnant and suffered an unidentified flu season would be ending now. The virus continues to spread widely and rapidly.
The notion that this virus will disappear in the summer is more a hope and an expectation.
The numbers of confirmed cases reported by the government every day are now only a tiny fraction of thousands of cases across the country. The scientists are mostly concentrating on the serious infections, which fortunately remain rare.
All right, we'll stay on it. Bob Bazell here with us in New York tonight. Bob, thanks. We also want to let you know there's an interactive map that is tracking these swine flu infections worldwide. We have put it on our website. That's nightly.msnbc.com. Violent weather is making news again tonight, most of it in the south, but it's all part of a huge crescent-shaped weather front that really stretches from New York all the way down to Florida, and it's trudging slowly eastward. Strong storms started moving through the Tennessee Valley earlier today, destroying at least 100 homes in the states of Alabama and Mississippi. The same system also caused dangerous hailstorm in Texas, which made driving a challenge. In Atlanta tonight, Weather Channel meteorologist Stephanie Abrams is with us. Stephanie, I looked at the radar map before coming out here. It looks like a midsummer pattern with the storm sparking the length of the front.
That's right, and it is going to continue into the day tomorrow. Let's show you what happened over the past 24 hours. And this complex of storms really started in Oklahoma. And after all, it's May, and this is a month on average when we do see the most tornadoes.
All right, Stephanie Abrams at the Weather Channel for us tonight. Stephanie, thanks as always. The state of Maine today became the 5th state in the nation to allow same-sex marriage, joining Connecticut, Massachusetts, Iowa, and Vermont. Maine's governor, who had earlier opposed the measure, signed the bill after it was passed decisively by the state legislature. Earlier this week, the Washington, D.C. City Council voted to recognize same-sex marriages that are performed in other states. When we continue along the way this Wednesday night, an American automaker saving jobs and, they hope, along the way, their own future, and making a difference, an unexpected solution for people with no place to live. We are back. We turn now to the auto industry. The Ford Motor Company has its own challenges ahead, but they are rightfully proud of being the only one of the Detroit Big Three not to accept taxpayer bailout money. Ford did announce today it's retooling a plant that made big gas guzzlers in order to produce smaller, greener cars. It's at a time when other automakers are cutting production, cutting thousands of jobs. Phil LeBeau of CNBC is with us from the Ford plant in Wayne, Michigan.
Working on the principle that less may be more, Ford is spending $500 million retooling a plant that once made gas-guzzling SUVs, turning it into one that will churn out green, fuel-efficient cars.
We can make now, for the first time in many, many years, cars in the United States, fabulous cars in the United States, and do it profitably.
Good, I love working for you guys.
Alan Mullally is confident. Phil LeBeau, CNBC, Wayne, Michigan.
The city of Detroit has a new mayor, better known for his years of work in a different line of work. Dave Bing is an NBA Hall of Famer who played 9 seasons for the Detroit Pistons before building a successful career in the auto parts business. He'll have to run again later this year to keep the job. The election was held to replace former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, who went to jail for obstruction of justice. A technology milestone to report tonight. Federal researchers say for the first time, the number of American households with just a cell phone connection to the outside world has surpassed the number who only have an old-fashioned landline. 20% of households were cell phone only in the second half of last year. They point out the recession has caused a lot of people to drop their hardline phone service. It was billed as the best job in the world, which is probably why 34,000 people applied for it. And tonight, the best job in the world has been filled. This is the lucky man who got the job. He's 34-year-old Ben Southall of the UK. And here's the job. Caretaker for Hamilton Island and surrounding islands on Australia's Great Barrier Reef. The job description itself: swimming, snorkeling, exploring, and writing a blog entry twice a week. He will be paid $100,000 to live in a 3-bedroom house on the beach for 6 months with his Canadian girlfriend. All that probably explains the 34,000 job applicants. We are back in a moment with tonight's in-depth report, finding new ways to fight an old enemy.
I thought I knew.
We are back with tonight's in-depth report. As we saw at the top of tonight's broadcast, the Taliban is on the move, posing a threat in Pakistan now, as well as Afghanistan, where U.S. forces have been in the fight now for more than 7 years, longer than World War II. That war has not been going well of late. Now American commanders are trying some new tactics and applying some hard lessons learned. Our own Jim Maceda is on the ground in Afghanistan and filed this report.
Abdul Majid is the face of a new U.S. strategy in dealing with the Taliban, a member of the People's Protection Force who get a decent $120 for Afghanistan.
When we come back here tonight, how to make a house, a home, and make a difference in the process. With NBC News. Time now for our Making a Difference report, and especially when it comes to victims of this economic downturn, so many of you have written to us asking if anyone has thought of pairing up all the empty homes and apartments out there from the housing crisis with the people who need them right now, the newly homeless. 2 problems, really, and it turns out there is a solution. Our report tonight from Phoenix and NBC's Chris Jansing.
Chris Jansing, NBC News, Phoenix.
How about that? That's our broadcast for this Wednesday night. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We hope to see you back here tomorrow evening. Good night.
Sunday, the war on terror and fighting the Taliban. 2 exclusive interviews with the presidents of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Only